All right, I think we're ready to go. We're going to call this meeting to order. It's January 14th, 2025. This is a meeting of the Lakeville Area District 194 Board of Education. If we all want to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we want to start with a roll call to let everybody introduce themselves, maybe starting with on my right.
Hi, Amber Cameron.
Brett Nicholson.
Paul Carbone.
Matt Swanson.
Michael Bauman.
Kim Baker.
Carly Anderson.
Brian Thompson.
Our cabinet.
Brenda Albrecht, Administrative Services.
Michelle Humphrey, Executive Director, Student Services.
Emily McDonald, Assistant Superintendent.
Bill Holmgren, Executive Director of Business Services.
All right, we've got Kim Elsing with us as well. Just want to let everybody know we're going to kind of cruise through the meeting a little bit tonight. We do have legal counsel coming in at 6:45. They charge by the 10th of an hour, so we'd rather not have them waiting. So we'll get on with business and try to roll this along pretty quickly. Next item is just agenda additions, and if there are any requests for additions to the agenda. If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We get the motion first? All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda as drafted by Director Nicholson. Do I have a second?
Second.
There's a second by Director Carbone. Any discussion on the agenda? As there is none, all in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, it's approved. If it's okay with you guys, as I think the policy, we want to make sure we do get to this first. I'd like to start with the policy discussions. Brenda, were you going to discuss cell phone policy? Sure.
I'm going to probably need a little bit of help from Superintendent Bauman on this one. My understanding is that there was collaboration with some of our principals on the cell phone policy that you have before you this evening. It was compared to the MSBA model policy, and it was reviewed by legal counsel as well. So what you have in front of you is a culmination of those facts.
Okay. And
If I may as well, to add to that, much of what's written into this policy as our first reading recommendation is also in practice in the school system for the last 2 school years. So we're not departing from that either.
have either of you had a chance to speak with any of the staff just to see how it's going so far, if this is the policy that's been in use?
I have not.
I have. This is part and parcel to. It's been going extremely well, and we think that we want to stay the course as it's outlined in this policy.
Okay. Director Thompson.
As I'm reading this, I just want to make sure I understand this. The proposal came in as a Roman numeral. Is that 14? Is that it? X4? 15? So I'm assuming, is this in addition to is this an add-on to the existing 524 policy is how I'm reading it? So it'd be continuing. Okay. And so then, all right, that's my first question. I'll let others ask.
All right. Director Baker, do you have a question?
Yeah, we had looked at this policy before. We've been talking about it as a board and through the policy committee. And one of the things, Director Thompson, I think that you had brought forth when you were on the policy committee was that students would leave their cell phones in their lockers for grades 9 through 12. Looks like they're allowed to keep them on their person as long as they're silent or out of sight on this one. And then another question I had with regards to students filming other students during the school day, if they have them on their person, they would still have the opportunity to do that. And I know that that has been a problem within the schools. Some of those videos end up on social media, and then, it impacts all kinds of things, social, emotional health, and all of that. So I'm wondering if we're going to keep that in where they can't keep their they can keep their cell phones on them, not in their locker. What is the consequence for filming other students? Because I do know that has been a problem.
So are you recommending that 9 through 12 be changed to putting their devices in a locker? Or that's one question I would have. And the second would be, consequence are predicated on student handbook, or the term's eluding me right now, but we try to do calibrated based on the context of the event or the incident, and so those could vary, is the best answer I can give you.
Okay. I'm not sure that I'm recommending it. I would just like some discussion around it, knowing that that's been an issue at the high school. I've represented or spoken with several families, students with disabilities that have had that happen to them, and just other students within the student body where there have been recorded and those videos have ended up on social media. So I'm just opening it up for discussion with the board, I guess.
Director Anderson?
Yeah, and I'm reading this book right now that is making me think a lot about this, The Anxious Generation. We should all read it. And I think the concern to me is there is a lot of research coming out looking at mental health with kids and how this has been impacted by smartphones especially, but also use of the internet. And I think my concern, it seems like there's a difference between the pre-K through 8 as well as 9 through 12 in terms of what access they do have to the device during the day. And so in pre-K through 8, it looks like it has to be kept in the locker throughout the day. And that might be because they all have lockers. Like at the high school level, they don't all have lockers, so that's partly a problem. But I am also thinking about the evidence of how, or what we're seeing in terms of the evidence when kids do not have their phones, they're thinking about their phones, what's going on their phones. And so I guess from a broader perspective, when we think about how this is very similar to current policy, and what I've heard from teachers is they don't want to police this, or they are struggling to police this. And so for me, this goes way beyond policy and the bigger discussion of how we as a district manage this, because the same old approach is not resulting in good things for kids' mental health. So my point, I guess, is I appreciate at a higher level, kids might have more access to their phones in between classes and at lunch and things like that. But there is that worry that students have about what is someone posting, or what is someone snapping or whatever about me during the day, how do we create an environment where kids can just focus on their academics during the day?
Director Thompson?
Are you referencing that point of view for students in high school or from pre-K to 8?
Well, it's, can I? Yeah. So it seems like pre-K through 8, we're saying they can't have access to it at any point during the day.
Yes.
And at high school level, we're saying they can access it in between classes. And, so even my daughter, she got some new AirPod headphone things, earbuds, whatever they're called. And I was talking to her about, you can't bring those to school. And she's like, I only use them between, in my class or whatever, when the teacher's not talking. And I said, you can't have them. So I understand that this is very difficult for teachers to police, but that's the bigger concern to me, is all of this can be outlined, but how is it going to be implemented in a way that's effective?
I guess to that point, because I think the first section just says out of sight, so not necessarily not in the classroom at all. Are you saying you'd rather see it be, they can't use it at all during the day, it has to be in their locker, not accessible to them, or?
For 9-12, they don't have lockers, so that would present a problem. That's why we are under the this is a vast improvement from where we were, in 21, or maybe, I don't remember what year that the school did this change. I know when I was here, it was allowed for open use, and that has been curbed to this model here. From a logistical perspective, not having a locker presents a different problem. Out of sight is been enforced, and I think we've been successful with that. Maybe Dr. McDonald might know differently or better, but that's my understanding from personal observation and from being in classrooms in the high schools and talking to our educators and our administrators in the buildings. They're in a much better place, and that's what's articulated in here. If we were going to, and I'm not opposed, I'm not pushing back in any way, if we want to say not available to the students in 912, we would have to figure that out logistically, and I'm not sure I would advise that sitting here right now, but going through the process, the technical process of offering changes to the document on a first reading, we could evaluate that, and I'd be obviously open to that.
Director Carbone?
Yes, a question about out of sight. Even though it's out of sight, there's still an audio recording capability for a phone. So are we not vulnerable for recording private conversations, even though you can't see the phone? There's no imaging, there's no video that needs to be done, but you're still recording a conversation. Does that not create a problem? Particularly if it's a private conversation.
Well, I'm not going to push back on that. You could do that under a whole variety of circumstances and scenarios that it's supposed to be in your locker, but it's in your coat pocket. I mean, we could what if those things quite a bit. I would just say that becomes an enforcement issue, a violation of the policy and the process and procedure and those kinds of things. That's the best answer I could give you, Director Carbone.
Yeah. Superintendent Bauman, then, under respect for privacy rights pre-K through 12, should we make it a little stronger? And let me explain what I mean. In number 1 and number 2, what I'm seeing is shall not photograph video, shall not transmit images, et cetera, et cetera. Should we have a little bit stronger verbiage in there that specifically says no taking audio also? So that at least there's a line in the sand there in the policy?
Yeah. You could add that to record, clarify it's both video and audio.
Yeah.
Director Cameron. I was kind of ignoring everybody over on the right side,
That's fine,
sorry.
I get it.
Okay.
I just have a couple of comments and questions throughout the document. One was, as technology constantly evolves, right, it's hard to list everything that could possibly be on the list, but one question I had was smartwatches. How is the district currently handling that? Because it can perform almost all of the same functions as a phone, but yet students wear smartwatches. So that's one question I have. To what extent could someone make the argument, and this might be a legal question, that a watch or even a phone is a medical management device, like where it says you can use it except? Do we need to be explicit about what includes medical management, or could someone say, I'm trying to count my steps, or I'm checking my heart rate? Would that qualify? That's a question I have. Then under item D, academic integrity, it seems like we're kind of dividing that section into classroom or curricular-based experiences that we facilitate as a district, and the second is experiences that happen within our school buildings but are not necessarily governed by our district. And so, like the listing of ACT, advanced placement, et cetera, it seems almost like I had questions about should we even include information about that, because each of those testing agencies have requirements that the staff in our district who are administrating them have to abide by regarding cell phones in particular, but other things as well. And so perhaps the policy is like we just follow the testing agency's policy, and then they have repercussions if those policies are broken. And then my last one, sorry, one more thing, is we say under responsibility of personal device that the district will not be responsible for storing, but then in violation, we say that, and I agree with this, that we might take a device from a student. So those seem to contradict themselves to me. We are then storing a device in those situations. And just a point of clarification, I think taken is an awkward term. I think the district confiscates the device. Taken seems like we hoard it forever, but confiscation I think is a different connotation. So those are some observations I make for consideration.
I just one question. C2, students shall not email, text, post to the internet or social media or otherwise electronically transmit images of other individuals taken at school without their permission. It seems like it could be, and maybe we're allowed to do this, it seems like it could be viewed as restricting activities outside of the school building, which seems to kind of tread on free speech grounds. And I don't know that we have the right to, I mean, are we going to be looking at when things are time-stamped and stuff like that? And maybe there are rules about this already that I don't know.
So the first
I'm not aware of.
sentence of the document says, "The Board of Education or the school board directs the superintendent, school district administration to establish rules and procedures regarding student possession and use of cell phones in schools." So in my mind, they're in our schools, and these process procedures, rules apply in that environment only. Is that, or is your question more broad than that?
No, it seems to suggest posting at any time, essentially without the permission of the other person. It kind of seems like one would almost do. C1 would kind of envelop two. I mean, if you don't have permission for the picture taking in the first instance, but I guess somebody could allow you to take their picture but not want it posted. Yeah, I mean, I know this is where obviously there are end arounds to all of this, and kids will figure out ways, and so we're trying to do the best we can with what we have.
So again, it kind of gets to the philosophical discussion around, do you write procedures and cover for all in every scenario, and if you didn't have it in there, it doesn't apply, or do you keep it more broad, give the authority to administration? We have a process and procedure that we're articulating, and there will be exceptions that occur because humans do what humans do, and you try to mitigate that the best that you can along the way, and maybe make procedural adjustments that fit within the policy, or if the policy needs to be redefined, that's brought forward either by administration or others, as is our due process. So that's a hard one for me to answer, other than to say that under legal review and looking at policies that the Minnesota School Board Association offers, we're trying to follow that in order to be as comprehensive and overarching as possible. There is some prescriptive, this is a little more prescriptive in nature than some of our other policies, but because it's cell phones, and I wanted to make sure that the integrity of what has been established in the school system and has been working fairly well, that we find a way to sustain that.
Sure. Director Thompson?
Yeah, I think what you shared is probably, I'm directionally aligned with you. As I look at pre-K to 8, like no cell phones, first bell to the very last bell. That's pretty much what it is, unless for medical reasons. And so when I say cell phones, any personal electronic device that's connected to the internet, or you guys can expand that. But conceptually, that's what I'm envisioning. For 9th and 12th grade, I was under the impression that maybe it happens at North, but maybe it happens in some classes or not, but they use these sleeves, I guess. And so a student comes in, they put their phone in this sleeve, and from what I've heard, some teachers may count that as like attendance. So if your phone is in there, then you're tracked as you're there. If your phone is not in there, and we know, then you're not tracked, but that's a separate administrative thing. But I think, and directionally for 9th grade and 12th grade, no cell phones or personal electronic devices during the class session. And so students can use it during the hallways, can use it during lunchtime, but that's it. And so that is what I believe is what we're trying to get to with this document, or, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Are there any concerns of the board, I guess, with 9th through 12th having some additional privileges like that? It seems to make sense given their age and hopeful maturity. Director Nicholson?
I guess I just had more of a question at this point. Like, what have been the major issues? Like, have we had any, and again, some of us are new here, so the last 6 months, what's been the big issue? Have there been any big, issues regarding legal, regulatory, whatever? Somebody got in a whole bunch of trouble with something? And I don't need specifics, but how many are we talking?
Well, I could speak for before this policy or this process and procedure was in place, we had multiple types of incidences that occurred I'll say in our secondary. Not in middle school, I'll say high school, so let me just clarify, high school. And they were primarily social media related types of things. In the short time I've been back, I can't think of an incident that has gotten to me that I've had to deal with cell phones, cell phone related. I cannot think of one. And I don't know if Dr. McDonald over the past 2 years could address any that have occurred, but I do think this policy's been pretty effective.
Director Anderson?
Okay, we all really need to read this book. I'm serious. So I'm just going to bring the concerns from the book, where really I think one of the questions or one of the challenges we've been dealing with in the district that keeps coming up when we discuss levies and things like that is mental health of students. And we think, oh, maybe this is related to the pandemic or something like that, but really the research shows that all of these things were on the rise well before the pandemic. And there's good argument for how phone-based childhoods have impacted mental health as opposed to all of us growing up in more of a play-based childhood. And so I don't think I disagree with the 9 through 12 having increased access to phones, but I'm just thinking it would be great to hear from our high school principals about what the lunchtime looks like. Are they interacting? Are they all on their phones? Because this is a time when they should be interacting in a more, so I don't always hear the same things in terms of how this is playing out in the schools. And so Superintendent Baumann, I know you have a much higher level view that I appreciate, but I also don't know that people are making these connections between what we're seeing as the mental health crisis that's happening at this level and how much access they have to their phones during the school day.
Director Thompson?
I don't disagree with you at all, and if I could just say we don't need the phone, period, you're in school, that would be fine by me. I'm okay with that. I would love it if we're focused on what we need to be there for, make some friends, have a social life, and do all that kind of stuff. Although kids nowadays are growing up in a different environment, so how do we balance it? Like I said, I would wholeheartedly love to say no, but I think you'll have a revolt too. So how do we walk that line?
And then enforcement during lunchtime would also be another issue, like who's patrolling that. And,
Right.
But, Director?
I agree with Director Thompson that, and excuse me, and Superintendent Baumann that if our staff, principals, deans, teachers feel like this policy is working, that's great, and that they should bring to us any concerns where procedure is not possible because of policy. My husband in another district is a dean, and I know I'd be surprised at the high school level here if there weren't cell phone issues on the daily that aren't rising to administrative levels, but it's a constant battle, I think. But if they feel like this is supportive of what they're trying to implement, then I support that.
Is it safe to assume, if they want more authority for enforcement, they'd let us know? Is that safe to assume?
Yes, but I think Director Anderson's suggestion of having the principals come and maybe talk a little bit about it from their perspective would be very valuable, and I would be very supportive of that.
So I was just going to agree with Director Anderson in bringing in the principals, given that this is the first reading, and we can make more changes as we need to. I would like to hear from the principals first before we make any further changes to the document, and then I'm also looking at time, on how much time we spent discussing this and what we still have left on the agenda.
Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Brenda, and I appreciate you and Mr. Bowen putting this together for us to review. Proposed policy 208, and just to let everyone know on the board and those that are here. So under our current policy 208, we're required to put any revised policy or new proposed policy on the agenda for a board meeting 2 times before the matter can be voted on and approved by the board. So this is considered the first time. I mean, it can be on the agenda more than 2 times, obviously, but it has to be on at least 2 times. So this is the first for both the cell phone policy and the proposed revisions to policy 208. We do have a deadline on the cell phone policy that I think has to be approved by March. But yeah, we do have plenty of time before then. But I would ask Director Thompson, as he was kind of the chief architect of the revisions here, if he'd like to discuss briefly what changes were made.
Can I make one comment first?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because I called you today about
You
this.
did. Yep.
I do want to just point out that, so 208 was passed by the previous board in December in terms of revisions, and some of it was updated just to be consistent with MSB policy. But I also just want to point out that historically on the previous board, what we did was have the policy committee review and make recommendations to then bring to the board. And so I just want to acknowledge that process we're not following that process and what you have outlined in the policy committee resolution. Yep. So I would actually recommend that once we decide who's on the policy committee, we actually bring this to the policy committee to then come back to the board before that. That would be my recommendation.
Is there an existing resolution appointing and governing the policy committee, or is it just a committee that was established to discuss policy changes?
It was just a committee that was established. There was no resolution that was passed.
Okay.
Yep. And then I believe in December, the policy that was approved was just statutory updates to align it to MSBA. And so then what I did was I shared last week again, looked at the policy, looked at the MSBA version as well, and then other school districts that had this policy. And so that's where all the red lines are coming from what other places have, and then also adjusted it to the 25% versus whatever, versus certain policy numbers for the cadence. But if we have, if you want to wait and you send it to a board policy committee, it'd be 2 of you, and then, or if you have already read it now, it's kind of like, well, it's up to you if you have questions.
Yeah. Oh, Director Cameron.
So I have quite a bit to say about this particular topic, so bear with me. So last night I reviewed the documents for tonight, and again, during my lunch break, thought I just want to review these policies again to make sure I'm abreast of what's going on in the changes. And I have some major concerns about what's happening right now with this policy, not the revisions in particular, but the presented version that we have in the board book and in front of us is not an accurate redline copy of either the version that was approved at the December meeting or the policy that exists online currently. There's at least like 33 times where either the copy is presented as current copy without any redlined information, or policy is just deleted, current policy with no indication in this copy that it ever existed. So 14 of those times, it's just calling this group school board instead of Board of Education, and like that's something we can hash out and figure out. But 19 other times, it's more substantial. For example, like the public comment process that currently exists in our policy is removed completely and not track changed. Also, regarding like the emergency policy procedure, our current policy says that if we create an emergency policy, it would expire in 90 days. This version that we're looking at says it's 1 year without any mention that it's a change in policy. So I really feel like what's presented is not ready for a discussion. It's not redlined in a acceptable, appropriate way. I think it's misleading to have spent multiple hours today kind of looking at all these and figuring out like where are the actual changes happening, I think is not an effective use of board time, and I don't think it's very transparent to our community. I'm pretty frustrated about that this was presented to us in this fashion, to be honest. This is not the level of work I hope from our board, and that I think we really need to figure out our process, and maybe it's the policy committee on how we want to document edits so that we are clear that what is red line, what is new copy, what is old copy, and this version does neither of those things. And so, Brian, I appreciate like your research into the ideas. I'm not necessarily against the ideas, but I am against presenting a copy tonight that is not accurate.
Can I ask a question? Just the policy itself, and you pointed out 2 points that I've taken note of regarding public comment and then also the emergency policy and the ending time. I mean, by no means are you saying that we need to start from the existing policy, because we could just scratch the whole existing policy and start with a fresh policy and have no tracked changes, correct?
Correct.
So
But I think what's implied is that, so I highlighted where the changes were made and where they weren't changed. I think what we're implying is. we
I
have
mean, did
tracked
you have other
changes.
issues besides just those 2 issues? As far as the
In terms of
the actual
process?
form and issue, not process, just issues with the draft policy?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Do you want me to talk about those? Or?
Yes.
I mean, to be honest, I don't feel like it's worth talking about the actual policy tonight. As a board member, I want a clean copy where I can compare what we're trying to propose and how it differs from the current policy. I think to that end, I don't know what our current policy is. I know the board passed a policy in December. That is not on our website, so I don't know where we are in that process. So I don't even know what policy version we're editing at this point. The one on the website, the one that was passed, or
And
something
I
else.
understand that, though. But,
Yeah.
I mean, if you have specific issues with this draft policy in front of you.
Yeah. Do you want me to bring
just
them
so, yes.
Okay.
I mean, they have to be brought up at some point in time.
Okay.
Why not now?
Okay,
right?
sounds good. So some content-based concerns I have. I think we contradict ourselves in the version that was presented tonight. There's an addition in here that says we'll review 25% of our policies over the 4-year period, so all of them are reviewed. I think listing a specific percent can get us in a bind. Some policies require extensive review and edits, while others might not. And so I think it's great to say we'll review all policies within a certain period of time, but to limit us in 1 year to a percent, I think can put us at risk for liability. There's also a contradiction. What is left in the policy, it says that every 3 years we're going to review all policies. So I'm not clear, are we saying 4 or 3, and which one is better? I would argue let's review them in a more efficient, faster way. So I kind of like the 3, which is the existing policy. I'm concerned about removing public comment from this process. I think I appreciate having feedback from community members on how best to move policy in our district. And so taking away an opportunity for our community to interact with us, I think is, I'm not really sure why we would do that. And then ultimately, I think, especially around like the emergency policy information, I know it's significantly expanded, and I think to the extent that we are aligned with MSBA because they do their homework, they know the statutes, and they've done a lot of the work for us. I feel like it's important for us to align with recommendations from MSBA and put Lakeville flair into it when it's needed. But I don't think we should reinvent the wheel. In other words, so it's a lot, but those are my ideas for this one. But ultimately, I don't feel ready to call this a first reading.
No, I appreciate the comments, and I might have you send me a list later just so I make sure I get them all down.
Can I do
And
mine?
again, like I said before, I mean, it is a first reading. Whether or not it's the first of two or the first of three, is something we can discuss at a later time, right?
I know,
So-
to that end, like, I know at the last meeting I said I'm not a super formal person, but I am super thorough. And so I just want to like make sure that as a district, as a board, we're not getting ourselves in trouble or miscommunicating with our community. And
Sure.
that's at the heart of this.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for those comments. You are right. The website is not updated with the latest policies, and so you did not have a version of that. I had a version of that because of what was passed, and so I use that as the initial baseline. In regards to the school board, you are right. I did not change. I did not cross out Board of Education and replace it with school board, but that is one that is what MSBA had as well. So I did not do the track changes on that one. But in regards to the roles and responsibilities of our district or of school boards, there is no policy around. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. There is no statutes around what policies, how policies are created or documented, or anything like that. That is all determined at the local district level. State statute says we have the authority to create policies in regards to how we want to run our operations. But in regard, so that's one area. So while MSBA may have a templated baseline version, which is fair, ultimately it's our board that gets to decide how policies are created, how they are reviewed, how often we want to review them, of that nature. So I thought those are some comments.
Chair Swanson, can I have a?
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Director Thompson, that we should make sure that our policies reflect our kind of local context. Just to add a point of clarification, today when I wanted just to understand these changes versus current policy, I did look at the website version and clearly saw like, okay, these are not aligned. So I went to the board book from the December meeting where I know the policy was passed, and I did a line item with that was passed, and it's still not jiving. So I looked at both versions. So I don't think it is an accurate red line copy. Just
Any other comment on 208 before we move on? All right. Moving on to reports and discussion on committee assignments and council assignments. I did ask all of the directors to send me a list of which advisory councils they would be interested in serving on or attending and participating in. I do appreciate everyone sending me what their recommendations were. I do know we're a little tight on time. But yeah, did anyone have any questions? I know as a new board member, I'm looking at a list of 12 different items, roughly 12 different items. And I don't know probably a lot about what happens at all of these. So if anybody else had a question about something they may be volunteered to serve on, now would be a great time to ask. Director Baker.
So number 10, AMSD, typically the chair sits on that one. And treasurer typically sits on the finance one. I guess for me personally, like I'm currently on the Community Ed Advisory Council. That was a role that I took on when Director Shinley resigned. I would kind of like to switch things up, just knowing that other councils are switching things up too, because we'll have new board members coming on. So that, I think I sent that to you too. That was just my opinion on that. The ones that I was interested in were the 917 board representative. I have a son that attends 917, and I also did a lot of my practicum work as an educator in that district, so I'm very familiar with the buildings and the programs, and their operations. So that was one that I was interested in. But other than that, I'm up for whatever other board members want to do.
Yeah, my guess is everyone's fine if you want to be the representative for 917 and then also the special ed.
I think you have to formally vote on that. Is that right, Kim? No? It's just an appointment. Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking. Thanks.
And just so we're clear, in Superintendent Bauman, maybe you can help me out with this as far as what is required by statute to have a board member participate in. From what I could tell, it looked like community ed,
Yep.
special ed, teaching and learning, and then wellness advisory council.
I shared a document with all board members regarding what the law requires versus what maybe is more practice within the school system. So with regards to your particular question, Chair Swanson, SEAC, I should not use those acronyms. The special ed and the community ed, for sure. Now, teaching and learning, if you read the statute, it does not specify that. However, we have traditionally done that in this school district, in that we've considered it law because, and I don't want to misquote the statute, I think it's 120B.11, but I would say for the highest level of accuracy would be special ed and community ed.
Okay. And just, Ms. McDonald, just to let you know, everyone wants to be on TLAC, so I hope you have more room. But yeah, so I feel kind of bad we're going to have to limit that and spread the love around. Wellness Advisory Committee, I know that's a newer one.
Yep. You're going to need that one.
What's that? Director Thompson?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Mine's going to be lengthy. Go ahead.
Oh, my question was just, on some of them, I know not some, not all, but on some, are we allowed to have more than one rep if people are interested?
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
just can't have 4.
Right,
So,
yeah, okay, cool.
yeah, I mean, my thoughts, at least from what people sent so far, specifically addressing the required ones. Community ed, I was wondering, Amber or Brian, if you guys would want to serve on that one. And only one of you has to. Brian had expressed some desire in Lakeville Arenas Board.
I think you did. You did. Because your kid's in hockey.
Well, I spend all my time at the arenas.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
I also think, I do want to reflect, like, I'll say I've served on I call it GAC, but I agree with Superintendent Bauman, I should probably say the Gifted Advisory Council, the Multi-District Collaborative Advisory Council. So I've served on GAC for 2 years. I've served on the MDCC as both a parent and a board member. And I've been on the DSLT, which I don't see listed here, but those, I think I've served my term. I do think it's helpful to have people who have experience in these roles too. So wellness is right up my alley I'm a mental health professional. But I also think, is it a place for people to learn about things that they don't know about in the district? So I would see good rotation with us across this next 2 years to just make sure it's not just people who are doing what they know, it's more, and I know you have the expertise and you're amazing at that, but also learning something new about our committee.
I actually had you for TLAC.
I would love to be on
Because I think that
TLAC.
was one of your top priorities.
I will take the arenas if nobody wants to do it, because I do spend a lot of my time there.
Okay. And I know we're limited on time, so I think these are things we probably can discuss. I can discuss individually, just confirming what people are willing to serve on, especially if we don't have to vote on it. I did want to just briefly touch on what we want to do with existing board committees, and if we want to create some additional board committees. Because I know we had discussed, at least right now, there is a policy committee, which I think we should keep, and I would state that we should have a resolution. One has been passed around about what that policy, how that is going to operate, especially in conjunction with Policy 208, with policies coming to the board for review. We also have a public engagement committee right now, right? And who serves on that? All right.
Terry was
What-
also on that with us.
What are your thoughts about continuing that?
Yeah, I would continue on that.
Okay. And I know,
I was serving on the policy committee toward the latter half of the year, but I'm happy to stay on the public engagement committee and let someone else step in my role for that.
okay. The other ones that we discussed was finance and facilities, was kind of another topic. I know that we have the Finance Advisory Council, but wondering if the board, any interest in the board having its own committee to maybe have a more narrowly tailored focus to maybe create requests and send them off to the district office for further report back.
I would be in favor of that.
Yeah. Anyone with specific interest, I mean, obviously the treasurer, Amber, I knew you had also expressed interest at one point in time. Okay.
Nope.
Anybody else on policy? I think I would have interest in policy just from the legal side of things. I imagine Brian would. Anybody else interested in policy committee? Raise your hand. You feel free. Don't be ashamed of it. Yeah. We'll mark you
I'm
down.
happy to be involved, but I don't know if doing 2 is a good idea, so.
We've got room. The other one was HR.
No, I know, but two subcommittees. Well, yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay.
HR negotiations would be the other one that we've discussed, just strategy, and then possible review of any other issues that might need board review and report back. Director Thompson, did you have any more comments on, I think that was one maybe you had thrown out for consideration.
For the HR and
Just-
negotiations one?
Yeah, content-wise and.
Yeah, we're looking at other districts, they had negotiation committees, and I think over the past 2 years, I feel that the past environments warranted some sort of board member involved in HR-related decisions, from certain roles to certain strategies to staffing allocation mix, just to provide additional insights around fiscal responsibility, but also what that staff makeup might look like, as well as negotiations. And then also there seems to be some not union, but there are some grievance meetings that we get called upon. So having someone in that having a committee in that group, I think would be ideal. Yep.
So would that be a committee that would meet regularly, like the policy
Yeah.
and public engagement committee, not just like as issues come up?
Correct. Yep. Looking at our organization's benefits and how our benefits are operating, and because we don't have anyone on in that committee as well, or in those meetings.
All right. And then the final one was the academics committee. What's that? Yeah, obviously academics, I know I've talked to Director Carbone about this a lot. I mean, that should take up a lot of our general discussion in every meeting. But I do think it would be beneficial to have a committee that meets to kind of, further, investigate certain issues that we want more questions on, even outside of TLAC, because TLAC has their duties that they're responsible for under the statute that they handle for us, which we're appreciative that we don't have to do because it's a lot of work. But there might be some other things we want to look at as well, and then coordinate with that committee, and then also report back for the board.
I'm interested in that one.
All right.
Could I make a recommendation that I feel like a lot of new ideas are being thrown out, and I appreciate that. So instead of like, I'm interested actually in the latter ones rather than the earlier ones that I said I would do. So I think having a moment to kind of hear what all of these subcommittees are and what their function will be, and then asking board members which ones they want to be part of, or
Yeah, and so I guess my thought was to, and obviously it's just time constrained, was just to discuss them generally. The goal would be to have an actual resolution of the board to form the committees, and then we discuss appointments at that point in time. So we would have further definition as far as what the purpose of the committees are. And if we get to that point and say there's no ROI here, then we don't do them. So, Director Thompson.
Yeah, I think the best way to think about it conceptually is there's 3 different buckets of committees. You've got board committees, which is, I think, of quite a few that you listed off from policy, HR and negotiations, finance and facilities, this academics committee, and public engagement. The second bucket is going to be more of your advisory committees that are required and not required. And so the ones that are required, obviously we've got to keep. The ones that are not required, as a board, we should probably have conversations around what is the value add of us in those respective advisory councils or not. And the administration can decide if they want to continue forward with those or not. And the third bucket would be more of the liaisons that we need to appoint. Some that are required and some that are not. Things that are required for that would be like the representative for 917, the representative for the Minnesota High School Association League. Not required might be the Lakeville Chamber. Do we want to send representatives there? The Lakeville City.
Rotary.
Stuff of those natures. So it may be good maybe to have them all listed and then we can kind of come back and discuss it a little bit further when we have additional time. But there you go.
I will just, sorry, can I say one more?
Yeah.
I do think we are talking about a lot of new things, and it might be helpful to maybe, because all the new board members, some of us are going to be here for 2 years, and some of us are going to be here for 4, but it might be helpful also to let people get settled this first year, and maybe we introduce this new, but I don't think everybody has an appreciation for not just the time we sit at this table, but also like all these various committees that, like the policy committee was meeting every 2 weeks. So that's 2 days a week that in the night you are. So I just want to encourage us to be thoughtful about how much new we're introducing before we cover the things that we're supposed to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also want to be cautious that we're not duplicating work that's already being done by the district office. I mean, fortunately, they carry a large load on the advisory council, so we don't have to. But at the same time, some of it's fun to get into. So, yeah. But yeah, we can continue that discussion at a later time. Just wanted to discuss it a little bit here. But we do have to get rolling with some things. Just, there are no registration for public comment. Just moving on to 6. Recommended actions for future meetings and topics. So the January 21, 2025 meeting, which is next week, we have it as board development. And the goal is to have, Ms. McDonald's going to be there discussing different aspects of teaching and learning and kind of letting us dig into that. Just in review of kind of our legal opinion that was provided. Well, I don't even know if this is a legal opinion or a packet of information that's available on our drive. Because we are, let me just rephrase this. My plan is to, whenever we're gathering and discussing matters pertaining to the school district, I plan to call it a board meeting because that's what it is, right? Legally, anytime we're even receiving information that pertains to business of the district, it is considered a meeting, has to be an open meeting. And so we'll probably have, just for consistency, an agenda that will be similar to that. Next week, I do intend on it being more limited so we can focus on teaching and learning. And then we can move on after that to other topics that I know other people want to talk about. So just want to give everybody a heads up. Timing too. I did want to talk about bringing in a consistent time for our meetings, if they're all going to be changed to regular meetings. Right now, we hop back and forth from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, depending on what type of meetings on the calendar. Director Baker, is it a challenge for you to get here earlier than a specific time? Because I know you're coming from 9:17.
So some meetings I'm coming from 9:17, so that would be difficult, but like tonight, I had training until 5:45 in my district, so they were kind enough to let me call in and do that virtually. That's not always an option, so then it is hard. It's a drive for me, but again, that's my choice on where I work. But I do know other people work and have issues too, so.
Yeah, I guess my suggestion would be no later than a 7 o'clock start time. The reason I'd go earlier than that would be for, the staff purposes, but can everyone make 7 o'clock?
Yep, I'm in favor.
All right. With that, we are going to be moving into a closed session after the adjournment of our meeting. But under state statute, we're required to approve moving into a closed session. It has been placed on the agenda for notice purposes, as we're required to do. But we do need to vote on each of the items and get authorization of the board to enter into that closed session after we adjourn tonight's meeting. So the Minnesota Open Meeting Law, Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05, Subdivision 3B, allows the school board to close a meeting to engage in attorney-client privilege discussions. For all 3 of these cases or issues that are on the agenda, it would be detrimental to the district's interests for the board to hold a public discussion with its attorney, or any adverse party or their attorney could listen to or be made aware of the attorney's advice relating to the pending or threatened litigation. So it's my opinion that it's in the district's best interest for the board to obtain legal advice in a confidential setting to maintain that attorney-client privilege. So we're going to go down these all three of them and vote on them. The first item for the closed session, again pursuant to 13D.05 subdivision 3B, is we're seeking approval to have a closed meeting to engage in discussions with the school board's legal counsel related to litigation in the case of Cajun et al. Versus ISD 194. It's court file number 22-CV-02135. And again, it's to seek legal advice on responding to the lawsuit and alleged claims against the district. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the board going into a closed session following the adjournment of this meeting.
I make a motion.
All right, motion has been made by Director Baker. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Director Carbone has seconded that. Any discussion on the topic? There being no discussion, I'll call it for a vote. And vote to approve going into a closed session on item 8.1 after the adjournment of this meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, the motion is approved. Moving to the second item, the closed session pursuant to 13D.05 subdivision 3B. Once again, to engage in discussion with the school board's legal counsel. This is related to litigation that is pending or threatened by a former student. Once again, we are seeking legal advice on responding to the charges and the alleged claims against the district. And the district seeking the district attorney's analysis on the same. I would entertain a motion to approve going into a closed session on this following the adjournment of this meeting.
So moved.
All right, Director Cameron has motion to approve that. Is there a second?
I'll make the second.
All right, Director Baker has seconded it. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion is approved. And the third and final one, the board seeking a closed session pursuant to 13D.05 subdivision 3B, once again to engage in discussions with the school board's legal counsel related to litigation that is pending or threatened by a former student. The board of directors is seeking legal advice on responding to the charges and the alleged claim against the district, and consult with the district's attorney to seek analysis of the same and the district's options for resolving the claims. I would entertain a motion to approve going into the closed session.
I'll make the motion.
All right, the motion is made by Director Baker. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, and seconded by Director Carbone. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, the motion is passed. We will be kicking everyone out of the room after adjournment in order to have that closed session. But I don't believe there's anything else on the agenda, unless I'm missing something. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All right, Director Cameron's motion to adjourn the meeting.
We're not adjourning, we're moving into closed session.
Oh, we're adjourning.
We adjourn after,
Adjourning.
right? That's what he's saying.
We're adjourning.
We have to come back in here and
We have to
adjourn.
come back in and adjourn after we're done, because we're still like in session, but we're in closed session, so we can't adjourn at this point.
We might need to seek legal counsel on that issue.
You would adjourn into closed session now, but the meeting is still going. So you're not adjourning the meeting, you're adjourning into closed session. You'll come back and adjourn the meeting after you're done with the closed
Okay.
session.
Oh, very good.
All
I'll
right.
make a motion to what he said.
Yeah. So let's,
You've already voted, so you can just move right into closed session.
okay. So if you guys want to come back, otherwise I think we're going to kick you out so we can have the closed session here. Oh, yeah, I suppose we don't need to approve adjournment then. Then back in the tech, we'll also want to cut the video.